All right, perfect. So hi everyone, welcome to the first panel in our climate conversation panel series featuring the Starfish Canada's top 25 environmentalists under 25. Today's session will be recorded, so if you have a preference to keep your camera off, that's totally fine. So for those of you who are new to the Starfish, we are a nonprofit organization that empowers youth voices through our national journal and amplifies change through programming and education. Our Top 25 program is an embodiment of passion and forward thinking. We award 25 young environmental leaders not only physical awards for their dedication in environmentalism, but also provide them with opportunities to continue to grow. And this is actually one of those opportunities. So our 6-part panel series will feature our 2024 Top 25 winners and will cover various topics, including sustainability, reconciliation, colonialism, policy change, and much more. And we are so happy to have you join us today. So before we get started on the panel and introducing our amazing panelists, I wanted to acknowledge that the Starfish Canada's work stretches across many homes of many treated, unceded, and unsurrendered Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit communities in what is colonially known as Canada. I am coming from Treaty 13 on the traditional lands and territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas of the Credit River, also known as Toronto. So welcome to today's session, Future Aspirations, Dreaming for the Future. Our speakers will be speaking in the language of their choice today, so that's either English or French. And so please set up closed captioning with your preference. I'll share the instructions in the chat so it makes things easier for you. 1 second. Perfect. Oh, goodness. There we go. Okay, perfect. Oh, there's a word count on messages. Okay, that's fun. Okay, perfect. So set up the speaking language, your speaking language, and the language you want the captions to be in. Perfect. Okay, so this is our panelist. So our first on our panel is Sasha Emery. Sasha is a climate activist from Yukon who advocates for the representation of Francophone and Northern communities at a federal and international level as a member of the Prime Minister's Youth Council and as a delegate at the UN High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. She co-created the Francophone podcast, Conversation Climatique, as a resource to address climate anxiety and spur hope. Our next panelist is Alexa Bates. Alexa is an environmental engineering student at the University of Guelph who leads sustainability initiatives as president of Engineers for a Sustainable World and co-chair of the 2025 National Conference on Sustainability in Engineering, inspiring peers to drive change through grassroots actions. Okay, and then we have our next two panelists. So we have Aidan Abrahams. Aidan is dedicated to sustainability and environmental stewardship through his work in carpentry, Indigenous clean energy projects, and volunteer firefighting, aiming to create a sustainable future for future generations. And our final panelist is Hannah Permaul Flores. Hannah is a fourth-year student at the University of Toronto. She is an award-winning researcher, spoken word artist, and environmental advocate focused on climate adaptation, community resilience, and empowering BIPOC youth to pursue environmental fields. So thank you all for being here today and for sharing your thoughts on today's topic. Let's jump right in. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That works. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to spotlight our panelist. Perfect. Okay. Sorry. Sorry, Alexa. You're just going to be super big for 1 second. All right. So we're going to jump right in and we're going to go straight into our first question. So our first question is, where do you hope to see the environmental sector in the next 10 years? What do you think people should do now to help make that future a reality? Does anyone want to jump first into that question?
Yeah, for sure. I can take that one. Dansei Kyowa. Tapwe Miyogisagawa. It is a good day today. And just to answer the question there, where I hope to see the environmental sector is for each and every one of us within, modern day society to kind of use less and give back more. Being as human beings nowadays, we like to take and take and take from Mother Earth, but there's no real, I guess you could say, mode of giving back to the earth as well, which is what I like to do within my own traditional teachings. I am from Plains Cree First Nations, Frog Lake, and that is located in Treaty 6 territory. And the way people can make this a reality, I guess, is just to use less and give back more. Being as our ancestors, many of them like to live with the land rather than trying to take from the land. And that's what I like to highlight and try to find within my work, living sustainably and living also in coordinates with nature itself. But yeah, that was just my quick answer. I wonder what all of our other panelists are thinking.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Aiden. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I saw Hannah nodding her head along for that, so I'll pass it off to you, Hannah.
For sure. I think this is a very big question to try to answer in a few minutes, but one thing that I was focused on for my perspective stems from what I'm studying, which is forest conservation science. And I think specifically in that industry, there are a lot of misconceptions about forestry and practices in the forest industry versus what people outside of the industry view in terms of forest management and sustainable forest management specifically, such as, prescribed burns and other maintenance like thinning, where you're taking away something from the environment, but with the intention of being able to improve the regeneration of these forests and sort of simulate these healthy things that occur in nature already, just to revitalize the forest and encourage new growth to emerge. So I think I'd like to see people being more open to hearing experiences and reports and research from people working in the industry before they form opinions that sort of paint a negative picture of sustainability practices without getting like a holistic perspective on what these practices aim to accomplish and how they can actually benefit the environment. And I think sustainability is such a broad thing, and everyone has a slightly different definition for the same word. But I feel that if we're open to having more conversations with different people working in different areas, then that can help to build more of a better understanding of how we can move forward. So I think just being comfortable with talking with different people and getting new perspectives is going to be really important going into the future.
Yeah, beautifully said, Hannah. I think having an open mind and really getting a professional's opinion on what sustainability is really important. Sasha, Alexa, just one if you want to jump in.
I can go ahead. I think that I initially had a similar, I guess, response to Hannah in the sense that this is such a big question. Like when we talk about the environmental sector, like what are we actually even talking about? And so, from what I know about the environmental sector, and then maybe in engineering more specifically, um, there is such a massive push for mitigation, and we are constantly talking about how we can lower our overall greenhouse gas emissions and how we can reach that net zero goal. And this is kind of the main conversation that we have when we're talking about environmentalism and when we're talking about the environmental sector in general, just to, I guess, overgeneralize. Um, but I think that what I would like to see in the next 10 years is if we could shift our mindset a little bit and take that one step forward towards climate adaptation. I think that we could really make a lot of change. Of course, in the face of our ever-changing climate, mitigation is very, very important. We should continue, of course, to have these conversations about net zero. However, this can really be done at the policy level, and this can be done in so many different ways. Whereas in the environmental sector, if we're able to have this constant conversation also surrounding climate adaptation, then I think that we're really going to be able to do a lot of good. I think that specifically in engineering, what we're talking about a lot is how we can rethink everything that we're doing to lower our overall emission production, for example, or rethink our manufacturing processes, for example, or things like that. And really, we should really be rethinking kind of the basics of what we're actually doing and rethinking about, for example, how we need to redesign everything and how we need to rethink everything because of where we're at with our climate. So instead of maybe kind of sitting back and thinking, well, we're going to be able to tackle this issue of climate change, so we don't actually have to rethink everything we're doing. Well, unfortunately, we're a little bit too late, and that's not the case, right? So if we're able to focus on climate adaptation and change what we're doing right now, I think that we'll be able to prioritize safety. And I think that the environmental sector will be able to expand in that way.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alexa. Sasha, the floor is yours.
Super, merci. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis vraiment contente de pouvoir joindre cette conversation aujourd'hui. Mais oui, je pense encore, comme tout le monde a dit, c'est une très grande question. Le secteur environnemental comprend beaucoup de choses et bien sûr est dépendant de évidemment des systèmes politiques et économiques dans lesquels on existe aujourd'hui. Donc, par exemple, si on pense au secteur à but non lucratif, où j'ai eu la chance de travailler l'été dernier avec les espèces envahissantes, tu sais, beaucoup des programmes et notre capacité et nos ressources dépendent ben, justement des ressources financières qui sont allouées, bien qui nous sont allouées par les gouvernements, mais aussi par des dons, par des entreprises. Donc, je pense que si on pense au futur puis au secteur environnemental, c'est vraiment important de considérer ça, puis un peu se demander ben, comment est-ce qu'on peut assurer qu'on a ces ressources économiques-là. Et ben, en termes de personnel aussi, pour faire le travail puis mitiger les effets à un niveau national, international, mais aussi communautaire. Donc, pour ça, c'est ça, quand il y a de l'instabilité, ça peut être stressant, surtout si on est quelqu'un qui travaille dans le secteur environnemental. Mais je pense que c'est bon ouais, de se tourner vers sa communauté, puis voir un peu si on est capable de mobiliser des ressources à ce niveau-là, au niveau communautaire. Puis justement, voir si même il peut y avoir des collaborations entre même différentes provinces et territoires, surtout même moi j'ai grandi dans le nord du Canada et souvent il y a un manque de ressources ou même de fonds pour pouvoir faire des projets. Aussi, je pense aux communautés éloignées puis aux communautés autochtones aussi qui sont plus exposées aux effets des changements climatiques. Donc, ouais, je pense que ce serait bon de développer un réseau plus fort entre les communautés et les villes pour avoir des ressources quand on en a besoin. OK, merci.
Yeah, I love that, Sasha. I love that you brought up the fact that it's really important for us to build resources to bring make our community stronger. I think what you're doing with your podcast is doing just that. So it's awesome. And I love all these amazing perspectives that we have here today. Yeah, let's move on to our second question, which is how do you balance hope and urgency in your work? And how can we stay motivated in the face of climate despair? In today's climate of climate change as well as mental health problems, it's sometimes it's difficult to balance how we feel, especially considering the extreme weather patterns we're having. I'm not sure where you guys are located, but I live in Toronto, and we had a huge snowstorm, and I know Montreal also got hit with a huge snowstorm. So yeah, does anyone want to start first?
Sure, I can jump in on that. I'm also based in Toronto, so I'm definitely in the thick of the snow right now. And I think a lot of what I have to grapple with tends to stem from social media or just media in general, and the types of media that we're consuming. And I think because we're fed so much information every day, just by turning on our phones or our laptops, anything, just because we, like, 99% of us have access to internet. So I think sort of trying to filter out what sources we're consuming, and the types of narratives that they're trying to paint is important, and to have a balance of consumption, taking breaks, not consuming anything at all, and, you know, staying informed. I think there's like this constant push for people to always stay informed and stay on top of the latest news and current events, especially related to climate change. And even more so if you're working in that sector, there's this push to constantly be updated. But for our mental health's sake, you know, we're not able to function that well in our respective work and our sector, in order to make an impact if we're not okay. So I think it's important to realize when to take a step back, and then also maybe trying to look at other sources that present positive climate stories that are not always about climate disasters. I think one important thing to remember is that the media is a business, first and foremost. They're trying to make a profit off of readership, and how attractive their stories are going to be. So they're going to put all of these videos about forest fires and, you know, the biggest ones that make the news, and not the small everyday ones that happen quite frequently, actually, that don't make the news, to cause alarm and dismay or climate anxiety. And I think remembering that the media does have its own agenda can help you to decipher when to consume, what to consume, and how to consume it.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. I think that social media and the media in general have such a big control over our emotions as well. So yeah, Sasha, Alexa, Aiden, does any of you want to jump in here and join the conversation?
Yeah, for sure. I can chime in a little bit there. Thank you so much, Hannah, for your beautiful answer. Consumption is very much a big problem, and that's something that I highlight a lot of my time within my journaling. Uh, there's a difference between like consumption versus consistency, which is something that I very much believe in. And when it comes to like hope and urgency for my work, I think the urgency of the climate anxiety and the climate despair that's going on is what gives me hope in times like these, because I don't know, ever since I was a young kid, I was always thinking about, oh, climate change and the world's going to be this hot by 2030, this and that. So I was always like having that inkling of hope that, you know, nature will work itself out, but we also have to work with nature to be able to work things out as well. And the way that I stay motivated in days like these is just, you know, asking for forgiveness from Creator or God, whatever you believe in. I'm not partial to one or the other, but within my own traditional teachings of the Creator, I try to have some faith and some trust in human beings and myself as well. And, you know, just giving back as much as I can, at least in any capacity that I can as well. And another reason for me to stay motivated is the next 7 generations, my own ancestors, they thought they were generational thinkers is the best way that we can describe them. So one thing that I always like to say is that we are the living testament to our ancestors' prayers. As you know, they prayed so hard for us to even be here and be modern day warriors is what I like to call us in today's world. And I myself am blessed with a child, so I want the best for him. And when the next generation does step up, and like as we are stepping up today, I wish for them to live in a, you know, a peaceful and coincided world that we can be one with nature and one with ourselves.
Beautifully said, Aiden. Thank you. Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I saw Claire give out a little heart, so I'm guessing the audience also felt moved by that. Alexa, Sasha, does one of you want to jump in here?
I can jump in. I really appreciate this question, and I think it is so important to be able to balance hope as well as urgency. And then Aiden and Hannah kind of took a similar perspective to me initially, I think, in the way that I think immediately of climate anxiety. And I love starting that conversation because it's so important. I think it's one that doesn't happen a lot. Um, and so I think that right now, with such a push for people to care about sustainability and to care about the environment, and maybe more specifically pushing youth to start their own initiatives that way, it can be really hard and it can be a really big challenge compared to other industries because we kind of have this ticking clock that maybe other industries don't. Um, and so I think that if we are able to kind of redefine success and what that looks like within the environmental sector, then we can kind of balance that hope as well as urgency. And so I think that a lot of the time, and like a lot of us being university students, or I guess just students in general, there is such a big push on green career and all of the action that you can make within your career after you graduate. When really, if we can redefine this a little bit and bring it to a smaller scale and come to the realization that grassroots and small local initiatives can really, really make a big impact. And any small step that you are making in any initiative that you take on is going to make a massive impact, whether that's in your local community or beyond, but that is doing something that matters. Then we can kind of bring the bar down a little bit and realize that you don't always have to think so big. Like when we have a problem that is absolutely massive and essentially the biggest problem that we are dealing with right now in our world, we can bring it down a little bit and realize that, yes, there is a sense of urgency, but we don't need to solve all of the problems right now. And so I think that that's really how we'll find that balance.
Alexa, I think you stated that so perfectly. I think that taking a step back and actually looking at the bigger picture and being able to break that down is so important in the work that we do. Sasha, would you like to add anything to this conversation?
Oui, merci. Ouais, je trouve que les autres ont très bien répondu. C'est une très grande question. Mais ouais, je trouve que pour garder de l'espoir, ça peut être difficile parce que ben, dans la société capitaliste actuelle dans laquelle on vit, c'est un peu normal qu'on est toujours un peu confronté aux grosses nouvelles et aussi ben, qu'on est vraiment comme mis dans un état où on n'a pas vraiment le temps de penser à ce qui se passe autour de nous ou d'être conscient de ça et de même juste ouais, conceptualiser, comprendre ce qui se passe autour de nous, ce qui est normal que ça nous rende stressés. Et c'est sûr, vu que, ben, comme on dit, il n'y a pas tant de temps que ça qui reste pour avant le point de non-retour, justement pour le réchauffement global et tout, et la limite de réchauffement. Mais c'est ça, je trouve que c'est important de voir un peu le repos comme une forme de résistance. Puis je pense que ça, c'est quelque chose que j'avais lu dans un œuvre de Tricia Hershey. Et je trouve que c'est vraiment bien parce que, comme, oui, tout bouge vite, on veut agir, mais aussi comme, tu sais, c'est comme ça que le système est fait. Donc, je trouve que c'est bien aussi de pouvoir reconnaître que ben, se, se reposer, tu sais, le repos, ça peut être une forme de résistance aussi parce qu'on va un peu contre ce que la société nous met la pression de faire. Puis peut-être qu'en ayant cette nouvelle perspective-là, on peut justement, c'est là qu'on pense à différentes stratégies, différentes solutions plus lentes. Puis c'est peut-être aussi comme ça que on reprend contrôle avec pas contrôle, reprendre notre relation avec la nature et un peu ben, reprendre le contrôle de notre relation avec la Terre, tu sais, où c'est nous qui pouvons dicter comment on la voit puis comment on passe notre temps avec elle. Donc, ouais, je pense que c'est ça qui me donne de l'espoir et aussi évidemment que je pense que je suis pas toute seule dans ça puis à penser ces choses-là. Faut juste me rappeler que, ben, comme on voit aussi aujourd'hui au panel, que il y a beaucoup de gens qui s'inquiètent puis qui s'impliquent. Puis je pense qu'ensemble, tout le monde, on se donne de l'espoir mutuellement. Donc, c'est bien.
Merci, Sasha. Yeah, I think hope is super important in the climate of the world that we live in. And I think it's really important that we find hope in the smallest moments. And yeah, as you guys were mentioning, it's really important that we can break things down and really find hope in nature and in the earth and the way we give back to the earth. Yeah, so we can move on to our third question, which is, what do you think the next generation environmental leaders will need to do differently to continue advancing the climate movement? I know Aiden mentioned a little bit about seventh generations and how we can look forward to our different generations in the future and see how we impact them. So Aiden, I'm curious about your thoughts on this question and how we can move forward with it.
Yeah, for sure. I can take the lead on this one. I think for the next generations, what we need to do is a little bit differently is focus less on individualism, being as, you know, a lot of society today has us like put into boxes in our own individuals. Like I like to call them boxes as we all live in, a big house and then there's a room and then we sleep on beds. So, don't limit yourself to the boxes and start fostering collaboration, being as, together we are stronger. And that's just the basis of, how society even works. I just came from a Nagani Ishuin conference, and the main company for that is comprised of 5 different tribal councils to bring all of that together. So that was a very good conference. I was able to speak on the panel there as well, and everyone did an amazing job, from the tribal council to the company to the branding and everything. And none of it would have really happened if not everyone was able to come together. So I think focusing a little bit more on collaboration and the community aspect of it, as well as, bringing in your own traditional teachings, whatever teachings that may be, being as much of the culture within the whole globe has so much to offer. And that's something that I learned when I was in university. I'm unfortunately not on university anymore, but I am looking to get back into it. My mother actually got sick, so that's a part of it, coming back to the community and learning as much as you can from your elders, your traditional knowledge keepers, and seeing what other people think when it comes to how we can strategize and think a little bit differently, as well as just keeping in mind the next 7 generations as well. Thinking of them always, all the time, is something that I like to uphold within my own daily life.
Thank you, Aiden. Hannah, Alexa, Sasha, does any of you want to jump in and talk a little bit about this question?
Sure. I think Aiden's answer definitely resonated with me. Just in that we should encourage one another to bring in our own authenticity into the picture. And I think from my perspective, as an artist, I think I would really, really encourage anyone to use your gifts and talents that you've been given and bring it into the climate space. And, that doesn't necessarily have to be something quantitative or, something like that, or like skills that you pick up in school, but it can also be just creativity, your creative pursuits as well. I think the ability of art to be able to move people emotionally, to follow the climate movement through art, visual art, song, dance, theater, film, the list goes on. And for me, poetry, I think it's so beautiful to see when people show their talents and their artistic pursuits for social change and for you know, in the name of climate resilience and resistance and climate change mitigation. There are so many talented people out there, and I'm sure everyone in the audience has a talent of their own that they can share with the world for the sake of environmental justice and environmental protection. I know that this year for me is going to be big in that it's going to be the first time when I'm actually merging my two worlds together through environmental science and my work as a poet. I'm going to be performing a poem that I wrote related to the climate crisis. And I feel like I ask myself, why did it take me so long to do this? I've been writing poetry since I was like 12, and now I'm almost 22. So I feel like now rather than, you know, never is better. But I want other people to do the same. I think art is very powerful and has the capacity to create a lot of positive change.
That's wonderful, Hannah. I'm so curious about this new project that you're working on. So I might pick your brain about this a little bit later. I know Sasha writes as well. Sasha is one of our writers on our editorial team. Sorry to put you on the spot, Sasha. So I'll throw the virtual microphone over to you, Sasha.
Merci. Oui, j'aime beaucoup ce que Hannah a dit et Aiden aussi. Ouais, à propos mais surtout à propos de l'art, de l'écriture. Je trouve que c'est très intéressant. Et je pense que c'est un petit peu aussi pourquoi moi je voulais joindre l'équipe ben, éditoriale de Starfish Canada. Parce que je trouve que c'est très important de créer des articles et des ressources qui sont bien parés pour les jeunes. Et mais je trouve que ouais, c'est une belle initiative. Sinon, ben, pour les générations futures d'environnementalistes, c'est sûr que c'est quand même dur de prédire à quoi ils vont faire face dans le futur, mais c'est normal que, considérant les effets climatiques à ce moment-là, ça se peut que ce soit un peu plus compliqué comme on voit déjà aujourd'hui, avec une certaine instabilité. Mais je trouve que ce qui est important quand on est dans le secteur environnemental, c'est ben, de savoir comment avoir des conversations avec des gens qui pensent pas comme nous ou qui ont des perspectives qui sont différentes ou qui sont pas du tout familières avec qui on travaille parce que souvent, euh, ben, surtout quand on pense au secteur qui cause les effets des changements climatiques, par exemple l'extraction des combustibles fossiles et tout ça, ou même les lobbies ou les grandes compagnies, des fois, on dirait pas que nos mentalités et nos perspectives s'alignent. Je trouve que ben, si on est dans le secteur environnemental dans le futur, il faut juste ouais, apprendre comment parler aux gens qui ont des perspectives différentes. Puis je trouve que le concept du deep canvassing, c'est intéressant. Je sais pas si il y en a parmi vous qui savent c'est quoi, mais en fait, c'est vraiment je pense, une technique qui avait été utilisée au niveau communautaire quand on fait du porte-à-porte pour justement sensibiliser sur des campagnes avec des gens ben, qui ont rien en commun avec nous, qui connaissent pas trop notre cause. Puis justement, ça permet de trouver un point en commun euh, à travers cette technique-là de conversation. Puis je trouve que aujourd'hui, plus que jamais, on a besoin de ça pour pas justement toujours être en train d'avoir deux côtés divisés complètement. C'est vraiment être capable de trouver ce qu'on a en commun, puis ben, travailler ensemble pour que tout le monde puisse bénéficier. Donc voilà, merci.
Thanks so much, Sasha. Alexa, the floor is yours.
I love that we all took such a different approach with this question. I think that that's so cool, like with respect to what each of us does. For me, being in engineering, I think about, I guess, sustainable leadership in a different way. And I think that one thing for me being in environmental engineering is I work with a lot of people who are not in environmental engineering, who are, different types of engineers or just different types of people in industry in general. And so I think that one thing that I would like to see in sustainable leadership is that more people take on that role. And so I think that a lot of the time we hear a lot about green jobs and, we're told a lot, maybe in engineering specifically, I don't know. But really, if you care about sustainability, to really try to lead a green career and to try to look for those job titles that have sustainability in the title and something that kind of really comes across as something that will make a change directly. And I think that we kind of need to broaden our perspectives a little bit and realize that it's not just these directly green jobs that are going to make that change. And so for me, I don't necessarily see sustainable leadership in any specific industry or any specific job or any specific person, I guess, in general. But I think that anybody can do it. And if we can kind of broaden our perspective, and then maybe specifically in engineering, the conversations that I have a lot from, different types of engineers or different types of people in general, is that this work can be saved for an environmental engineer, or it can be saved for someone within the environmental sector directly, when really, of course, that's not the case. And so we all know that to really make change and to really see sustainable leadership, we need to have more people taking on this role. And so we need to start the conversation no matter what industry we're talking about, but knowing that sustainability can be a part of everything. And so, yeah, I think that just shifting our mindset and hopefully having new leaders come in different industries that maybe we hadn't thought of originally is kind of where I see that.
Thanks, Alexa. I think that you're right. I think that all of you took different directions to this question, and I think that's really amazing to see. Yeah, I think that that's actually our last question. So I wanted to ask our panelists, is there anything else that you want to add to this conversation? Do you have any questions for each other that you're curious about? I will leave an awkward length pause. So feel free to jump in and just start a conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Hannah, what is your main focus within your poetry that you find nowadays? With, the leading climate change and all of our good work here within the starfish as well.
For sure. I feel like my poetry has definitely evolved quite a bit since I first started writing. I can't say that I'm, thinking about the stuff that I would write at 12. I can't say that it's necessarily on par with what I write now. But, I had to be there in order to get where I am. I've written about everything under the sun. I've talked about feminism, I've talked about racism, I've talked about personal experiences, I've talked about body image, and I've also written about sports. I've done a lot of different things, and I feel like I always had something in me to write about the world that I see around me. And I will write about current affairs, different global issues that are happening, whether they're relevant to Canada or not, I'll write about it. And I feel like I've had that same attitude now with the work that I do in forest conservation and, getting into the weeds of something that's like more narrow. I definitely see a lot of the need for a push for change now that I've sort of been able to study this in detail. And it's given me a lot more passion and the ability to write or craft a poem that I can be proud of and that I would want to put out there and share with other people. So I think like now that I've almost completed my education, I feel like having that as a base to form a poem has really informed what I'm writing. So I think while it is a first, it will definitely not be the last poem that I write related to something about the environment. And I hope that I can inspire other people who, might just be doing art on the side as a hobby, and they have a central interest that they're focused on, like climate change, but that they'll look at that hobby again and see it as, a medium that they can use for the thing that they're studying or, for a cause that they're really passionate about.
I'm actually going to jump in here as well. Hannah, that was beautifully said, and I think that I wanted to ask all her panelists today, like, what really inspires you to continue the work that you do? I know we touched upon this a little bit earlier in the conversation, but I'm curious, what pushes you to continue to work in the environmental field, or work in, continue to like do things to positively impact the world?
I can take the lead on that one. I don't know, for me, I grew up just right on the edge of our reservation there, and I grew up on the reservation for most of my life. And learning about all of the disparity between the government from Canada, so-called Canada, and our Indigenous peoples within all of Canada, within the treaty territories, and within those territories that actually aren't recognized by treaty as well. Further up north, and then our brothers and sisters in the south as well. So it's not a good answer, but it is an answer. So it has a lot to do with like resentment, but also wanting to do something more about that and not being so angry about it, and being more or less helpful within the conversation to be able to foster that collaboration, like I was saying, not only for us as Indigenous people, but with with governments all around the world. One of my hopes and dreams actually is for Indigenous territories to be recognized under the UN, so that we can actually have a voice on the global stage and actually contribute within those conversations. Because at the last gathering I was just at, they were talking about Indigenous people are going to be the leaders in the forefront for leading the change within the environmental sector. And this was told from Professor David out of the University of Toronto, I believe. He's now retired. But he had a lot to talk about when it came to climate anxiety, and as well as some sort of strategies that we can push forward moving on. So what motivates me nowadays is actually just a lot of seeing everything that's going on around me and wanting to do something more about it. Being a generational carpenter myself, I always wondered, why do we build all of these insane structures just for them to be abandoned later on? If you were to drive through a lot of Alberta, there's a lot of farmhouses and old houses that can be seen just off of the side of the highway there. And all of those houses actually require resources like nails, and a lot of the wood is treated as well. So a lot of those resources actually sink into the ground, and it actually causes some damage there as well. So just going back to as I said earlier, it's not a good answer, but resentment, and then wanting to do something more and not feeling so resentful, but also wanting to contribute a little bit more and being more resourceful, rather than thinking so much on all of the problems, but thinking more on the solutions that we can foster and come together. Because you can't get the answers without asking the question, and also working together as well.
Yeah, Eden, I think that was a wonderful answer. So I really appreciate that. And I think with global politics and our neighbors from the south as well, I think there is a lot of emotions there, and I think emotions do play a big part in inspiration as well. Yeah, Alexa, Sasha, Hannah, do you have anything to add, or anything you want to add to this conversation? I will do my awkwardly long pauses here as well, so take your time, think about it.
I can add something. I think that for me, kind of something that keeps me going is being from Sudbury. So for anyone that doesn't know, Sudbury is it's a mining city about well, I'm in Guelph right now for university, but it's about 5 hours north of Guelph. And Sudbury was at one point responsible for about 1% of the entire Earth's pollution, which is a really horrifying and staggering statistic. And so at one point, Sudbury was essentially absolutely dead. Every single lake was dead. There was no wildlife. There was essentially absolutely nothing in the city at all. And so, like, essentially like astronauts actually went to Sudbury to train before they went up to space, because Sudbury quite literally did not look like something that was on Earth, which is really, really completely absurd. But now Sudbury has gone through this massive greening project, and they've planted over 10 million trees, and they've changed the way that they mine, and they have brought back wildlife, and we have living, healthy lakes, and we have all of these really, really amazing things. And if anyone wants to go visit Sudbury now, it's a very green, beautiful place. And so I think that for me, being from Sudbury and then seeing what happens when we completely neglect our environment and just don't care about it at all and just go forward with industry practices, then also seeing what can happen when everybody comes together and wants to make collective change and restore something that at one point nobody thought was even possible. I think that that's what really keeps me going. And so even though sometimes we might think that this problem of climate change is absolutely beyond despair and that there's nothing that we can do, I think that the story of Sudbury is kind of something that I think back to, and okay, well, at one point we thought that we couldn't do something, but then we perfectly restored everything. So just coming back to that is, for me, what keeps me going.
That was a really wonderful story, Alexa. I think that having that moment of like realization that okay, change needs to be made and making that change, and it's like a full circle moment right there, and that's really amazing. I think I'm gonna have to add Sudbury to my list of places I want to visit this year. Yeah, Sasha, Hannah, do you guys want to jump in to the conversation?
Sure. I think there are two main things that keep me motivated to do my work. I think one would be my family, because thinking about where they came from, for context, my father is from Cuba, my mother is Guyanese, and my family on my mother's side of the family, they lived in like a rural area of Guyana, not very developed. So this is like the Amazon, it's rainforest, very humid and tropical. And they would build their homes on stilts. That was a very common practice in that region because of how heavy and torrential the rainfall would be. And that was part of the reason why they left that area, actually. They emigrated to the United States many decades ago. And my mom was just like a very young child at that point. So I think understanding their journey with climate resilience and resistance, and almost like influencing their migration from one place to another to build a life in an entirely new continent. I think that gives me motivation to push for climate change mitigation strategies, and working with communities to figure out how they can not necessarily feel that they have to run away from climate influences or climate events that they're experiencing, but that they can learn to live with them and to cope and to survive. And I guess on a second note, another thing that motivates me is to be able to teach people something and to share a part of my own passion or something that I know that can maybe inspire someone, even if it's insignificantly small. I love trees, I love forests, and I know a lot about different species that are endemic to Ontario and Canada in general, and being able to do public tours and teach people for free about the trees in their neighborhood. And I'm planning another one for this spring to lead like a larger tour group in and around like the downtown campus at U of T. And I love being able to share like barrier-free education. I think that it's definitely revolutionary to just be able to share knowledge, and to be able to change someone's mind or how they think about the world is so powerful. And being able to, see someone get excited about a tree that maybe they didn't really care about before, and now they notice it more often. So little things like that can also definitely keep me going and get me excited about doing more of those tours.
Thanks, Hannah. I think that if I was a student at U of T, I would be interested in going to one of those tours. But I mean, if the public's allowed, then maybe I'll see you there. Sasha, would you like to contribute to the question?
Oui, merci. Ouais, je trouve que c'est une autre grande question, mais qui est importante à se poser. Pour être honnête, je trouve que des fois, je trouve que c'est dur de rester motivé à long terme, surtout quand on travaille dans le secteur environnemental, juste parce que tout le climat change lentement, mais on peut aussi voir les changements assez rapidement aussi. Et comme je disais, il y a différents facteurs qui peuvent justement influencer ou affecter à quel point le secteur va bien ou mal, ou peu importe, il n'y a pas vraiment de mesure pour mesurer ça non plus. Mais oui, je trouve que quelque chose qui me motive particulièrement, euh, c'est avoir des conversations avec d'autres gens dans le secteur. Puis c'est pas juste comme à travers des événements comme environnementaux, vraiment à travers la vie, des conversations de tous les jours, où c'est là où j'ai justement même rencontré l'autre jeune avec qui j'ai commencé mon balado, mon podcast. Juste à une autre conférence, c'est n'importe quoi, ça montre que dans la vie, peu importe où on est, si on parle de ce qu'on aime puis de ce qu'on fait, ben souvent on va trouver des gens qui ont des intérêts similaires, puis c'est là qu'on peut commencer à créer des choses et créer du vrai changement. Donc oui, je pense que c'est ça, c'est toutes les conversations que j'ai avec les gens, ça me permet de nourrir mon esprit, mais aussi de partager ma perspective. Puis je trouve que ouais, juste en continuant de m'éduquer à travers ces conversations-là, ça m'aide à mon tour partager des perspectives avec les gens autour de moi. Puis même, ouais, comme je trouve que, en tout cas, je suis en contact quand même avec beaucoup de gens qui sont pas dans le secteur environnemental, donc des fois ils sont pas autant familiers avec ce qu'on fait, tu sais, puis le progrès climatique. Donc je trouve que c'est bien puisqu'en ayant des petites conversations tous les jours comme ça, tranquillement on peut peu à peu sensibiliser et justement avoir plus de monde qui se joint à la cause. Puis je trouve que ça c'est quand même très motivant.
I think that's a great point, Sasha. I think having conversations and starting those conversations with people in your daily life is really important. And I think meeting people in this space and kind of having those conversations equally as important. So thank you for sharing that. I guess we're gonna close this part of the session. Thank you so much for our amazing panelists. I think that we had a very mindful and productive conversation today. Perfect. So I just wanted to do a big thank you to our panelists and for everyone to coming out to come see our panel today. If you could use the little clapping emoji, that'd be great. Or if you can say a little thank you in the chat for our amazing panelists, that would be super helpful. So registration for our next panel will actually be open next week. So keep an eye out to that. And another cool opportunity that we provide our top 25 winners is Speakers Bureau. So if you're interested in booking one of our speakers to speak in a panel just like today, or as part of our Earth Day celebration, or as a they're interested in on our website. Hannah, Sasha, Alexa, and Aiden aren't currently on the website, but if they're interested in being part of Speakers Bureau, you might see them there soon. So if there is a QR code right here at the top right. So if you're interested, you can scan the QR code and kind of get directed to our Speakers Bureau page on our website. And also finally, don't forget that this Thursday at 9 a.m. PST, 12 p.m. Eastern, we're hosting a little snack and learn session. And so this is going to be a little bit of a space to continue this conversation and build upon it. There might be a chance you might see our amazing panelists there as well. And if you haven't already, you can email me at aishwarya@thestarfish.ca, or at this point, I feel like most of you have my email already. So check your inbox. You probably have an email from me. And yeah, just email me, let me know that you want to come to the snack and learn, and I'll add you to the invite. And yes, that is it for tonight. thank you all for coming and being a part of this conversation. I'll give you back 5 more minutes of your day. And thank you again for our amazing panelists.